Okay, we're here at Troopbach Lake, which for Americans is a pretty meaningful location here in the center of Hanoi. I'm here at the John McCain Memorial. This is actually the lake where he was shot down back in, I believe, May of 1967 in the middle of the Vietnam War. And of course, we're friends with Vietnam now, but we certainly were not then. And this is a memorial that recognizes the day that he would be, and I believe 10 other fighter planes were shot down. They were on a bombing mission here right in the middle of this great city of Hanoi, which I still can't wrap my arms around. But it's an interesting history, of course, because John McCain, of course, was captured by first civilians. They dragged him out of the water, they blew him, and handed him over to the military. And he then spent, I believe, the next 4 years or so in the famous Hanoi Hilton prison here in Hanoi. We're actually going to go visit that tomorrow, so we'll have a little video for that. But interestingly, despite the bitterness when he came home, about 20 years later, he and fellow Vietnam veteran Senator John McCain came to Vietnam, and they, in an effort to normalize relations between Vietnam and the United States. And as I understand it, reading history, John McCain came to have a very different perspective by the time that he died about the Vietnam people and the people who captured him and tortured him in prison for several years. So it's quite a story, and there's a memorial over here. The memorial talks about how this marker was first erected in 1967, which is, again, the year he was shot down. It was later refurbished in the 1980s when the United States and Vietnam normalized relations, and in the 1990s, and again this year in 2025. And it's a pretty interesting memorial because what you see here is obviously it's pretty minimalist. But the first thing, when I first came upon it this afternoon, the very first thing, of course, that struck me was the arms. The arms raised up. We see the fighter pilot helmet and goggles. But John McCain, both of his plane was shot down, and I think pieces of it fell somewhere into this lake. And he was ejected from the plane. In the violent ejection, both of his arms were broken. And of course, everyone knows the story about how John McCain was tortured in the prison, and for the rest of his life could not lift his arms much above his chest. And you can see that in a lot of his political campaigns and his public speeches. But it's actually a pretty impressive little piece of artwork here. And it sort of has almost sort of a Picasso surrealistic element to it. But I'm also struck by the downward slope of this U.S. Navy signature here. We have a star, which is I think represents both the countries of the United States and Vietnam. But this spot transformed, as I understand it, and I'm not an expert on this issue, but as I understand it, this spot transformed from a memorial of the capture of John McCain back in 1967 when the war was running at a horrible pace to today, where as recently as this year in 2025, the Vietnamese have been refurbishing the memorial in the memory of John McCain. And so it's got sort of this very complicated history to it, where you go from complete hatred towards at least some level of friendship. And I think most Vietnamese are very, very friendly towards Americans, at least in my experience. And I think for the most part in the U.S., the feeling is mutual. So So I guess that's sort of a complicated lesson and message from what was obviously a horrible, horrible war. When we come to this great city, I can't even, I was just a young boy. I was 10 years old in 1967, but I can't even begin to imagine what it must have been like, Hanoi, the center of the fighting in this war that 58,000 Americans and over 1 million Vietnamese died in over the course of 10 years in the American campaign, and of course the French were here for years before that. So this is now a beautiful, tranquil lake that in 1967 was not so tranquil. And it really it's kind of an emotional little moment, especially for an American to come here. And I was not any great big fan of John McCain. I voted for Obama, but certainly, as a former politician, I admired politicians who could actually reach across the aisle occasionally and treat the other side civilly, and certainly that was done at his hallmark, the way he praised Obama and supported ultimately his health care plan. So, very interesting man, John McCain, and this, of course, is the site of probably the defining moment of his life, and a very, very powerful moment in both Vietnamese and United States history. Let's take a little panorama here and take a little look at the lake. Just walk around the lake here. It's very, very beautiful. And next stop is the mausoleum, the Ho Chi Minh Mausoleum, and then tomorrow we'll go to the Hanoi Hilton.